Hello there and welcome to In My Opinion. 2020 was a pretty crap year and I ran into my own personal problems, but hey, I still got some game time in. I beat about 43 games and I decided to make a list of the top games I've played in 2020. Now this will be a bit different as a usual top 10 of whatever year, as some of these games are not 2020 release games and are just some games I finally got into in my giant backlog. And being fellow gamers, you know how big that backlog can become. I've done a review for some of these games and I will let you know which ones are these, and the link to the reviews will be in the description section. Also, I don't hate any of the games that didn't make the list, they just didn't make the list. And now let's get on to it. Let's start from the bottom with number 10, which has been playing in the background this whole time, which is Godzilla 2014 on the PS4. As a Godzilla fan, I really enjoyed it as it basically was a Godzilla simulator. You move slow just like the movies, blew up buildings, and battled other kaiju. Not only that, you can also use other kaiju to wreak havoc or defend the areas. The roster was also pretty good with 21 different kaiju to pick, and unlocking them wasn't that much of a pain. The graphics weren't amazing, but the character models themselves are nicely done and look true to the source material. Also, just watching things blow up and smashing other kaiju into buildings is fun to watch. I also like that we got different government officials depending on which difficulty path you took, as it added some personality to the game. I will say the controls are a bit odd when controlling a kaiju, but I felt like it didn't take me too long to get the hang of it. I know this game was tore up when it came to reviews, but I still had a blast with it. What sucks is if you're interested, this game is no longer available on the PSN store, and it's very hard to find cheap. But if you like Godzilla and find it for a good price, then pick it up. Number 9 is Strange Brigade, which is a third-person shooter from the same people who brought us the Zombie Army games. I ran through this whole game with a buddy of mine, Slick Heartless, and we had a good old time. The game's sense of humor kept us laughing, and the character designs are unique and fun to look at, and the personalities come through as well. So well that even though some have the same magic moves, you still end up gravitating to specific ones, like me and my friend did. The gameplay itself is nice and tight, and for the most part when it comes to the co-op mechanics, it works well. And we also never had a drop game while playing online, and the lag was barely there. There's also a decent amount of weapons to mess around with. The campaign itself is also a good length and there are secrets you can find. The game can be done solo, but feels more fun with friends, so if you're looking for a good co-op game to play with your buddy, then this ain't a bad choice. Now on to 8, which is Days Gone. Now before anything, I do know about the game's rough technical start when it was released. However, I'm just going by my experience when I played it, and I didn't run into any big tech issues. The game ran fine and played just fine. The gameplay itself was very fun, be it blowing away people with guns and explosives, or quietly stabbing them. This might sound sick, but killing people felt really good, especially with a stealth kill. I mean, even Deacon seemed to enjoy it. Then there are the Freakers who, while on their own are no problem, are actually more deadly in groups, especially when it comes to the main draws of the game, the Hordes. The Hordes of Freakers are super fun to take down and can be very challenging, and I was addicted to keep trying no matter how many times I failed. Also, this is one of the rare games where I actually like riding a motorcycle since it's actually sturdy and you don't go flying off for every little thing. The story itself is pretty enjoyable and the cast of characters aren't awful. Even the lead Deacon, which some people seem to outright hate or find dull. I personally felt like he grew throughout the game and I was fine with him. This was also a chunky game, lasting around 40 plus hours with a good amount of side missions and stories to complete. This is not counting the free challenge mode DLC they added later on either. Number 7 is DBZ Kakarot, which is actually a very fun action RPG set in the world of Dragon Ball, beginning with the Saiyan Saga and ending with Buu. The game is made by CyberConnect 2, which means simple and fun gameplay with some great visuals to boot. It was a blast just flying around the semi-open world, and combat does capture the anime, with it being fast with a lot of teleporting and big beams and explosions. I also like that even though it's called DBZ Kakarot, you're not stuck just playing Goku and you can use other characters like Gohan and Piccolo. There's also some sub-stories that have you interact with some past characters, which was an addition I really enjoyed being a fan of the series. Some people seem to have problems with the boss fights, feeling that they were too hard or cheesy or something like that, but to me they were some of the best parts of the game, making for a grand spectacle, especially memorable ones like Frieza. One problem I had with the game is some scenes did not play out exactly how they are supposed to from the source material, but hey, this is the closest we gotten to a good retelling since Budokai 1, and this game also makes up for the sin that is known as Dragon Ball Z sagas. Number 6 is Crystar, hack and slash that just ends up being okay in the gameplay department and could have been more. I still do like the fact that you have 4 different characters to use who have different weapons and share experience, so you don't have to worry about sticking to just one, and you're even allowed to change on the fly. While the gameplay itself is not much to write home about, it does make up for it with the story and characters. The tone is not what I expected just by looking at it, as it can get rather dark and the characters' personalities and backstories do keep you interested to learn more. I also enjoyed the art style some of the cutscenes had, as they were creative and caught my eye. This is a game that you're mainly playing for the story and characters more than the combat, but it says a lot that even though the gameplay was just okay, I was still invested enough to keep going. Number 5 is Sakuna of Rice and Ruin, which is a nice meld of hack and slash action and rice farming. I was surprised just how good the combat flowed and just how fun it was smashing enemies around with so many hits and trying out brand new combat skills you unlock along the way. The rice farming itself is pretty damn deep, and while it did feel overwhelming at first, the game has difficulty options to mess around with, so the farming didn't turn out to be a pain in the ass that drove me nuts. Which is good, as rice farming is a big part of the game and is very important. Combine all of that with a beautiful art style, enjoyable characters, a small story, heart, and you have something special. I'm still shocked that such a tiny team made this game. Number 4 is Control, which was a wild and weird ride. It's a third-person shooter and the lead character Jessie has some pretty cool powers like floating, telekinesis, and others. Then there's her badass morphing gun that can change on the fly into a shotgun, charging hand cannon, regular old pistol, and more. All of this really blended well with the combat, and my encounters with the enemies were always fun and got tense and challenging at times, never making me feel bored. One of the complaints for the game, at least the base console version, is the technical stuff, like how it runs. And yeah, I can see that, but to be honest, it never conflicted with how much fun I had fighting with enemies and exploring. I dug the atmosphere the game gave as well, as while it's not horror itself, it still gives an odd and creepy vibe, especially with some of its visuals. The story and lore to this world is also pretty damn interesting, and I found myself reading all the documents I found in the building, as it's about a world with objects that have very strange properties, like a teleporting rubber ducky, or a refrigerator that can cause horrible things to happen. And there's a certain organization that has a job of containing these objects. This made me realize that this game is basically based on the SCP World, which is a website that people made that turned into its own little universe and fandom, which is actually pretty fucking awesome, as I never thought we would get a high budget game based on that. If you're curious about SCP, I suggest looking up the Vogan and the Exploring series on YouTube to get a taste of what it is. Number 3 is Doom Eternal. I was always a fan of Doom since the olden days, and I loved the 2016 version. Doom Eternal basically took that version and went into high velocity. So you still get the same fantastic combat with all those glorious gory kills, but the combat here is just way more intense as it's faster, and the volume of demons you face at a time is a bit higher. While it's already more challenging as is, they also added more ammo management, since as you're spilling the blood of demons, your bullets drain pretty fast, and during the heat of the moment, it's kinda hard to find some just lying around. So they made it so the chainsaw kills makes demons spew out more ammo. Some really hated this aspect, but I didn't mind, and not only did it add more agency to the combat, but it also made me experiment with my arsenal more, like the fucking awesome super shotgun with hook that makes you fly towards demons to blow them in the face. One of the things I was afraid of was the addition of platforming, but surprisingly that turned out just fine. I also like to add a little bit more story to the game as well, and I know Doom isn't known for its deep tale, but what they offered here was pretty cool. Though I will admit I was a little bit confused with the story at first. My number 2 is Resident Evil 3 Remake. Growing up, Resident Evil 3 has always been my favorite entry into the series, and boy was I excited to play this one, and I have to say I walked away satisfied. The gameplay is great, as it has the same combat template from the Resident Evil 2 Remake, with the addition of a dodge mechanic. And I don't care what anyone says, I still like the fact that the zombies can take a beating, as it makes them more of a threat. It was also nice to see Nemesis again, and I really enjoyed his boss encounters. I had so much fun I ran through the game 9 times, unlocked everything, and had a blast destroying enemies with said unlockables. I know there is some stuff missing that was in the original, like the inside of the clock tower, and while I did miss some of the stuff, my overall enjoyment wasn't ruined by this. I also like that it still told the same core story as the original, albeit with some different turns, so I wasn't mad in that department. I enjoyed the characterization of Jill and some of the other characters as well. Hell, they actually gave some personality to Mikhail and Tyrell, instead of just being that fat guy who blew up and that other guy that I forgot even existed. My thought process is, while both are great, the original does some things better than the remake, and the remake does some things better than the original, and I don't see my mindset changing anytime soon. Now for some quick honorable mentions that were close to the list but didn't make it. Devil May Cry 5, a nice return to our old friends after that DMC reboot, though I enjoyed that game as well. Nero, Dante, and V all play differently, letting you mess around and have fun with 3 unique styles of play. We also still get the over-the-top, cheesy action goodness the series is known for. My Heroes 1 Justice 2, a fun arena fighter based on the My Hero series with a good amount of heroes and villains to choose from. The visuals are really nice and they do a good job capturing the source designs of the characters, and while the online story ain't the best, there is still a mission mode and arcade to have some single player fun with. Also, they did eventually add an English dub to this game, making it dual audio, which is appreciated. Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, a Souls-like take on lightsaber combat, which turned out really fun. I enjoyed its cast of characters, and while the story doesn't have too much legroom since the time frame it takes place in, it's still a good tale. Also, you get to pick your lightsaber killer, which is neat. The Evil Within. This survival horror game has some great atmosphere, and I love the creature designs as each looked so grotesque. The shooting as well felt pretty satisfying, especially when you popped a few heads. Technical wise, the game is really rough in the beginning with some frame rate problems, though after you pass that point, you're good. This one can also be pretty challenging at times. Now for number 1, which is Ghost of Tsushima. People call it just another open world game, and yeah, it's another open world game, but it's a fantastic one that does it right. There is so much content to do, but it never feels overwhelming and everything opens in a nice pace. It's also not intrusive to the HUD, as the game screen is pretty clean and you can just use the touchpad to let the wind guide you, be it to your waypoint or the mission you picked. The combat is enjoyable and you get this satisfying feeling as you take down your enemies with your blade, be it normal attacks or deadly counters. I also like the fact the game pretty quickly lets you choose how to lay out some plans of attack, be it stealth or straight up announcing yourself, leading to an amazing scene of taking down an enemy in a standoff duel, as some of your foes cower away. The story itself is pretty straightforward with a stop the big bad plot with some character drama added in, and it's enjoyable and has a great conclusion. The characters themselves aren't bad at all, and you actually can learn more about them doing the specific side quests that have their own plots. Then there's the tons of other side quests that help give a sense of life to this world. There's even fairy tale missions that can turn into some visually amazing battles. Oh yeah, then there's the visuals as well, which are just fucking gorgeous. So much so that even just riding your horse is awe-inspiring. I also enjoy just petting foxes that are around the world. They are so adorable. A good amount of people didn't gel with the main lead, Jin Sakai, though I personally enjoyed them. I felt his personality matched who he was and how he was raised, and going by his interactions, he wasn't some emotionless, dull character. I really don't get what people expected from him. I could go on more about stuff like the extra free content added post-release, like the fun co-op multiplayer and the new game plus with a harder difficulty option, which I still gotta get to. Though I'll stop gushing over this game and simply say I never got bored playing or looking at it. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you got any favorite titles you played in 2020, feel free to share them. Here's hoping for a great 2021. And remember, for gamers' sake, keep gaming.